Welcome to the Community of Practice on Autism Spectrum Disorder and Developmental Disabilities. We are talking early identification today, and very excited that the next people up will be talking about strategies for addressing social communication difficulties at home and at school. So Kellie and Haley, thank you so much for being here today. Feel free to begin your presentation, introduce yourselves, and take it away.
All right, and I'll share my slides here. I apologize, I don't know how to get rid of the top tabs, but that's okay. Can you see? All right.
That's looking good.
All right, so I'm very excited to be here, and I'm really thrilled that Haley agreed to join us today because she has a lot of great experience in sharing as well. We're going to talk about the fun part, which is what you get to do with kids and how you can help after you've identified that there are some concerns or identified challenges, as Dr. Wagner was sharing. So let's get into it. So a little about me. I've been a speech language pathologist since 2001. And I love my job, right? I love that I get to work with great people, great families. I'm part of an interdisciplinary team here at the Waisman right now. I've worked in a number of settings, including birth to 3, early childhood, special ed, high school, school settings, the autism treatment program that is here at the Waisman Center, and several outpatient clinics. And the best part about all of those is that I love to play with kids. And I get paid to do that. It's wonderful. And I also want to share a fun fact. I really love yarn. And so when we talk about fidgets and things like that, I'll be playing with yarn, just a heads up. And I'll give it over to Haley.
And my name is Haley Takau. I got my bachelor's degree in elementary education and special education at UW-Madison. Then I went overseas, I taught for 6 years, and I'm back at UW-Madison to get my master's in speech language pathology. My placement for the past 6 months has been at the Waisman Center. So I've worked with all of these wonderful people, and Kellie was my supervisor in the Autism and Developmental Disabilities Clinic. So that's why I'm here today. I'm also part of Project Castle, which is a specific program focused on autism. And I'm a LEN trainee, which is specifically focused on neurodevelopmental disabilities.
Great. So we thought it would be very important just to very briefly touch on some of the foundations of communication. And it's very complex. That communication has many parts to it. So social communication is one part. Receptive language is what we understand. And we have to be very careful that we don't assume that this is easy for everyone. Expressive language are those mouth words or verbal words, and how we communicate with other people is one way, using mouth words, verbal words. And a lot of times that can also be challenging for whatever reason or situation. Communication also includes gestures or communication actions. Sometimes we introduce simple sign language. There's also articulation or speech sounds, which is how we say the sounds in the words of verbal words and how people understand what we're trying to say. There's also written communication, or sorry, pragmatics, which is a fancy word for the back and forth exchanges and interactions we have with other humans. And we have written communication, which can include reading, writing, texting. We have other symbolic communication, which could include choice boards, speech generating devices, or emojis, or even community signage. And then there's all those other parts of meta communication, such as using your tone of voice, your body language, facial expressions, getting a text with all caps. And, we want to think about all those ways together when we're looking at the social communication strategies we're going to talk about today. So all of these things are factored into a successful social communication. Ew.
All right. And while we were framing our presentation for today, we really focused on being neurodiversity affirming. So it's essential when we're thinking about communication and us being communication partners that we realize that we have a role in things going well. So one of my favorite quotes, if you look at that image on the left, is when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. So when it comes to gardening, we would never blame a flower for not thriving or growing. We would give that flower either more or less water, we would add some fertilizer, we would maybe change its positioning to be more in direct sunlight, more away, but we would try to make that flower grow, realizing that we have a part in that. So we should look at teaching neurodivergent children in the same light. We should be thinking about how do we change the environment, not change the child. That image on the right is also one of my favorite cartoons, and it hits on a concept of universal design. So in that image, I'm not sure if you can read the words, but it's depicting a man who's shoveling snow off the stairs. And there's a child in a wheelchair that asks, "Hey, could you please shovel the snow off of the ramp?" And the man shoveling says, "After I finish shoveling the stairs, then I'll shovel the ramp." Not realizing that if he shoveled the ramp, he would be helping all of the people that are able to climb the stairs, plus the person that is using a wheelchair, plus other kinds of people, like people pushing strollers, or maybe someone who has bad knees and is having difficulty climbing up the stairs. So it's important that we realize that sometimes benefiting one person benefits many people, and it's important to keep that in mind. So in addition to focusing on changing the environment and implementing this concept of universal design, we also need to remember that each child is an individual, so their supports will be individualized depending on what they need, and that we should always be taking a strengths-based approach. Find what motivates that child, find what their strengths are, and then build up from there. When Kellie and I were creating this presentation, we spoke to two different self-advocates who have autism themselves. And one of our self-advocates, Erin Miller, shared with us, "Our culture seems to value verbal speech above all else. And if this gets rid of speech supremacy, I'm all for it." So just so you're aware that we created the presentation, but we also worked on the concept of like nothing about us without us. So we did have some self-advocates reviewing our presentation today.
Yes, nothing without us. So, all
Yeah.
right. So we decided, how are we going to try to figure out how to tell some of the strategies, because there are a lot. Spoiler alert, there's more than 10, but we came up with the top 10 in no particular order, and we'll just get right into it. So none of these strategies that we are going to share will cost you any money. There's nothing to subscribe to. I'm not making any money or selling anything, and anyone and everyone can implement each of the strategies we're sharing today. The key here to the magic is consistency over intensity, progress over perfection, and fundamentals over fads. I found this one showed up on my timeline, and I thought, this is great. It reminds me of the things that I need to do too, right? If I'm thinking about being more healthy with my body or more flexible, I could eat a salad one time, and that's a great start, but it's way better to do it consistently and frequently. I could do my stretches one morning and it feels good, but the key is to do it daily. And it's the same with playful communication tips we're going to give you today. As our other self-advocate shared with us, Hunter Markle, communication is a muscle and we need to train it every day. So number one, say less. Did you think that you would hear a speech pathologist encourage you to use less words? It's true. So as adults communicating with children, we often use too many words. Say less. It can be a little uncomfortable at first. There are more awkward pauses, and that's okay. So here's some examples. If you say, "It's time to get your shoes on so we can go to the grocery store. We're going to get ice cream for dessert." That is a lot of information all at once. If receptive language is a challenge, what are they most likely responding to? Ice cream, right? So then now you have a meltdown because of misunderstanding. So try this instead. First, shoes on, then go to the store. Or time for shoes. Or just shoes on, We'll take it one at a time. Remember, voice, tone of voice, facial expressions are important here too. Another one. You're not going to get your tablet to watch YouTube unless you clean up all of your toys because we can't leave a mess all over the living room floor and Grandpa's coming to visit soon. Ooh, we're all guilty of that, right? More words must mean we're going to get the message across. No, say less. So depending on your child's language level, some reduced language options could include first clean up, then YouTube, or just time to clean up. Bonus, sing the cleanup song, or start working together and say toys in. That's often more helpful than saying more words.
And along with reducing those verbal words, we should also use visuals to support our messages. Because that verbal communication is very abstract. It's an abstract thing that we do as humans. And verbal words are invisible and disappearing. Visual tools are stable and they can be referred to many times. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to have you listen to this message and I'm going to see what you remember. Today's gathering started with Tim Markle kicking us off with welcoming remarks. Then you heard from Dr. Lily Wagner regarding early identification, systemic barriers, and innovative approaches. Then we had a 5-minute break before we started the short presentation from me and Kellie about strategies for addressing social communication difficulties at home and school. After our presentation, we will have another 5-minute break before handing it over to Erin Thomson to discuss care navigation. Before we wrap up, Tim will close the gathering, asking for feedback, and then we'll finish. Or instead of all those verbal words that are disappearing and they've already gone, I could have given you this schedule. So as adults, we're constantly benefiting from visuals. This isn't just something for children. This is something, again, that universal design. If it helps one, it will help many. We see visuals in our everyday life. So when we're assembling a piece of furniture, we see diagrams on how to assemble it. During COVID, we had those cute little footprints all over the ground to show us where to stand to maintain that social distancing. The weather app on our phones, when we check in the morning, gives us little visuals right away. We have signage at the airport that will show you like where the departures and arrivals and luggage are. Menus have pictures to help us decide what we want. And there's so much more. There's a stop sign when you're driving that shows you that you're supposed to stop. All of these visuals help. So when I'm at the airport going to my gate, I can read the signs, but having that little visual is very helpful for me. So we can also apply this to children, especially children with autism. When we say something like, go clean your room, what does that even mean? Instead of merely providing those verbal instructions of go clean your room, we can provide visuals to help the child understand what a clean room looks like. So that image on the left is showing, oh, these are all of the steps I need to complete in order to clean my room. I need to make my bed, I need to hang up my towel, put my shoes away, etc. We could also, on that image on the top right, show a picture of what a clean room looks like. So show like, this is the final result. This is what your room should look like when you're cleaning it. We could also, that bottom right, provide containers with visual labels to show, oh, these are where your blocks belong. These are where your Barbies belong. These are where your cars belong. So these are just examples for cleaning your room, but you could incorporate this idea across any environment for any activity. There's also, I'm just going to scratch the surface on this one because we could honestly talk for weeks about augmentative and alternative communication and choice boards. But that device that you see on the left is a high-tech option. And it has It's a very durable device. It has an app. It has a lot of language. Just by touching a button, you can express all kinds of things. You're open to a new world of communication. But we don't need that fancy tablet to incorporate visuals in our day-to-day lives. That image on the right, we could use a choice board. So that one is depicting different options that we have for snacks. So you could hang this on your refrigerator, you could have it in a therapy room, you could have it anywhere. And that can show how to offer snacks to promote making choices, making requests. Notice that on that visual, there's a picture for everything, and then there's a word for everything. So you can use the real picture, you can use symbols, you can hand draw these items, but just having that visual example of what you're asking of the child is very, very beneficial.
All right. I said before, my favorite thing about being an SLP is that I get to play. So I often would hear when a child was asked by their family or a teacher, "What did you do today in speech?" And their answer is, "Play games." And I am so proud when I hear that because it's a win for everyone. They think that their work is play, and it is. So the magic that I want to share with you is that everything we do should be play-based. So a child's job is play. That means my job as a communication partner is to play. When we play, we're having more fun, we're more socially engaged. That's more natural for everyone. When it's more natural, the learning, you have more learning. And you have more learning, you have more carryover and generalization of skills, which is indeed more fun for everyone. And a spoiler alert, if you are bored, the chances are that child is also bored and less engaged. And then there's less learning and less social communication happening. So remember, consistency is the key to all of these fun things. Want to make it even more fun and engaging? Add music. So I'm really old, so I think of things like Magic School Bus or The Wiggles. I can still sing the fruit salad song. Can you? Fruit salad. I can see Tim. Yummy, yummy. Right? Nursery rhymes. They're predictable. They usually contain simplified language. So how about the Itsy Bitsy Spider? Or favorites like Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Or for transitions, the cleanup song, the goodbye song. There's a reason that song jingles from advertisements are effective and stay in your long-term memory. Let's try this one. Red Robin. Red Robin. I did it wrong. I saw Tim. Yum. It's almost begging you to say it, right? Music connects well with language building. Why? It's melodic, it's memorable, and it's fun. And it says less, usually. There's less words. So there's a good reason why Miss Rachel is so very popular and effective. This one is controversial, I think, because the social paradigm of learning often gets to be a picture of a kid at a table with an adult across. Well, I would challenge that and say that's not how most of our little kids and frankly our big kids and us as adults are meant to do things. Play is where social communication and learning happens most naturally. Is there a time when table activities are important? Sure, but it should not be our default, in my opinion. So as Carol Gray once said, I do my best work under tables. It's true. I've done that in my practice as well. So I would encourage more things like these, swinging, all these fun things. So parents often ask, what can I do at home? And I think they're waiting for me to print a worksheet or give them flashcards or tell them about a table time activity. And I would really challenge that and say there's so many more important and effective ways to work on communication, especially with our little kids. Our kids with autism are often more drawn to physical play than table time, and it's okay to embrace that. So don't get caught in this trap of sitting and drilling. Communication can happen anywhere and everywhere.
And on that note of leave the table, we're giving you a bonus tip of movement breaks. So it's important to recognize that we all regulate our bodies differently. Each individual will benefit from a different type of movement, and what works for you might not work for someone else. So next time that we have a break, so after we present, we'll get another 5-minute break. I want to encourage you to do something that makes your body feel good and makes it feel regulated. So this could be stretching, dancing, wiggling. You could even be staying still and doodling in your notebook, toying with a fidget for a little bit, anything that helps you connect with your body and refocus your brain. And in the spirit of universal design, notice how you feel while you're doing this. If you're feeling better and more regulated, kids will also benefit from taking breaks and moving their bodies.
I would also add that you can be doing it now. That's totally fine. You should be doing it now. It's not weird if the teacher's doing it too, is what Hunter Markle told us. All right, so we know that our kids with autism thrive in routines. Sometimes they even insist on it. So we're going to use that skill to build more social engagement and communicative interactions. How? Well, we've already discussed visual supports. So add those visuals to your routines, like bedtime routines and classroom activities. And if you have a visual, please don't ignore it. Try to follow the schedule that's there, even if you think the child is used to it or they're ignoring it. If you've gotten to the place of we don't need the schedule because everyone knows, celebrate that. That's great. Maybe it's time to update the visual, or maybe it's time to build in small steps and changes to the routine. It's how we plan for flexibility. So does your bedtime routine always go the same way? Well, maybe then it's time to change one small step, like let's add a flashlight to book time, or we let mom turn the light off instead of dad. Put that in the schedule. When the other elements of the routine are expected and predictable, it's easier for many of us to accept that we can plan for change. So take it slowly if you need to. One app I like to use is ChoiceWorks. It's easy to move the order of events easily, and you can negotiate with your child about having some ownership too. You can use social stories or social movies, so they share information which makes an upcoming event more predictable. I would say that routines can be fun, and schedules can include fun things like this. Here's a schedule that I really enjoy. What's the flavor of the day? Now I would say be unpredictable too. Wait, isn't that exactly what you just said to be predictable? Well, everything is about balance. So don't try to change too much at once, but the right amount of changes and unexpected things are important. If everything is predictable, it can get boring. So here's a few examples of how we plan to shaking things up. For example, I might change my voice volume. If I whisper, it calls attention to what I'm saying in a more dramatic way than if I was yelling or just droning on in the same volume. Another example is expectant wait time, dramatic wait time. If you set up those predictable phrases and then pause, the part that follows is even more emphasized. It's important to offer enough processing time for our other communicate partners. We don't want to exclude the people that do need that extra processing time or have different communication styles. Let's not forget about being silly and play too. So here's a few examples. Play-Doh, solid activity, right? You've got your Play-Doh, you've got your cutters, got a roller. Great opportunity for some language expansion. But add some unexpected things and it's more fun. Got a spider, you've got some corn, why not? But add a dinosaur and it's even more fun. Here's another example. Plastic Velcro food. I see it everywhere. Got your food, you've got your cutter, solid activity. You got some vocabulary that you can expand on, but add a dinosaur and you've got more fun and you've got more vocabulary options too. You can now say, oh no, my turn, dinosaur, help, stop. And you've got ways that you can make footprints in the Play-Doh with a dinosaur. So go ahead, Haley.
All right. Number 8 is social coaching. So we'll just spend a brief second on this slide and then we'll go to our examples of this. We can provide social coaching instead of telling our children, say this or do this. The best way to do this is by letting them in on our inner monologue, by thinking out loud and narrating our thought process to provide a model. So let me show you what I mean by that. Instead of saying something like, tell grandma that you love her, or say, I love you, grandma, we can say something like, grandma is leaving. I'm going to show her that I love her by giving her a hug. I could also say, I love you, or smile, or wave, or give her a high five. So when we do this, it provides a window into our thinking process during social interactions and shows that there are options while you're sharing with that decision-making process. This is another example, is that instead of, let's say that you're walking down a hallway to go to therapy and the hallway is blocked off. Instead of saying, just go a different way, you can say, what other way could we get to the same place? This way or this way? Notice that our responses were limiting the language, but we're also narrating that thought process to explicitly show what we're thinking and how we are coming up with that decision.
That helps with flexibility. That was a Tim Markle tip, so shout out to Tim. Echolalia.
8 minutes, Kelly, just so you know. Thanks for the shout out.
You're right, we're almost done. Thank you. Echolalia is one of those characteristics of autism that Dr. Wagner notices when we're looking at those early signs. But I want to make sure that we recognize that it does have meaning. So echolalia is when someone repeats something back they've heard, whether it's immediate or delayed. It can be a partial echo, it could be a full sentence. I often think about this as Bumblebee in the character Transformers. His messages were completely delayed echoes of movie lines or music. I think it's fantastic. I think it's important for our social communication partners to know that echolalia does have meaning. It might take us some time to figure out what the meaning is or how to respond if we don't immediately have the context, but don't disregard the communication itself. Many neurodiverse folks do this, and it is meaningful. It can be comforting, it can be a connection, it could be sharing a message. So an adult might say, are you hungry? And the child responds, hungry? Well, I would assume this is meaning something like, I'm hungry, yes. A child might also do, whoops, I didn't mean to put that one up yet. Might also do a delayed echo saying, are you hungry? As a request to get food at a different time. When they actually they might be meaning, I am hungry, right? So we need to honor that communication and treat it as a request for food. But one of the things we can do is we can model some more effective ways to use that language in getting their needs met other places. So instead of, you could say, oh, hungry? Yes, let's get some food. Or it's time for a snack. Those are things that echoed later have a lot more success in getting what their needs met, and it can avoid that UI reversal problem that we have sometimes.
All right. And last, but certainly not least, in our top 10 strategies that we selected is say what you mean. So essentially that means that we should use verbs that indicate what the child should do. And we should also avoid abstract, non-literal language, like saying time to hit the hay when saying time for bed or time to sleep is much more straightforward. So let's go over a few examples of this. We should, when using positive language, we should avoid words like don't, stop, and no, and instead use verbs that we want the child to do. So looking at this chart, instead of saying don't run in the hallway, we should consider telling the child what they should do, like walk in the hallway or use walking feet or just simply walk. If we, instead of saying stop hitting, we could say something like gentle hands or hands to yourself. We're making sure, because if we're saying like stop hitting, the child might just hear hitting. So we're rephrasing things to show what they should do, and it's positive language. So instead of like no jumping on the bed, you could say let's snuggle or let's sit down. Instead of saying stop yelling, we could say quiet voices or lower your voice. So as the adult, you can help the child co-regulate by providing a calm model. You can model lowering your voice. So if you're yelling like stop yelling, that's not a very great model for what you're expecting the child to do. So it's better to say this in a calm voice, like quiet voices is much more effective than yelling, stop yelling. As adults, it's our job to model what the child should do and use that positive language alongside with our model. Yeah. And then Kelly, you.
All right, yeah, I clicked too soon. So thank you everyone for your attention, and an extra thank you to Hunter Merkel and Erin Miller for being these expert reviewers of our slides and sharing their lived experiences. And we gave you 10 things, but I really want to challenge you to just focus on just one thing for after today. Build that up and then check in again. And we would love to have any questions or ideas. You can send them to me. For those of you who are watching as an archived version, my email is here, or anyone as well. So thank you.
And we do have about 3 minutes before we end the session. Fantastic job, Kelly and Haley. Thank you so much. I agree. Dr. Marks just put into the chat such practical and affirming way. It's beautiful. Does anybody have any like one quick question before we would go? Please feel free to unmute. You'll come on up to the top of my chart here, and I'll be able to call on you.
Also, great time to talk about yarn also. Mike has something there. Are you talking about echolalia, Mike? With after a minute, hour, month, year, or sometimes years later? Definitely.
And Haley, what was the name of your project? Castle. Thank you, Haley. Good job.
Of course.
I love the fact you can see this.
Yeah.
In response to Carrie, yes, we will try to, if you fill out an evaluation afterwards, you will receive a certificate of attendance as we throw out that stick. Carrot. Yeah, it's the carrot. We don't throw the stick.
No, this was a great
Go ahead.
session. Communication is really important, especially when so many autistic people have been given improper evaluations and diagnoses based on communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people didn't like the merging of Asperger's and autism when it happened, but I actually was at the ASA conference in San Diego in 2012, and the APA folks explained that merging was due to the discovery that communication issues really can't be used to determine a person's functioning level.
Right.
And the whole autism Asperger's dichotomy was based on basically speech supremacy. You had these biased people have this, oh, it was a whole Nazi thing, when in reality it was really just people trying to delineate who could and couldn't speak. And then when they figured out that that was really speech supremacy and not science, that really, in my opinion, justifies the merge.
I would also echo what you said, and we do get a lot of families who come to speech therapy first because that's the challenge that they're seeing. And so it's really helpful to have some of these tips and strategies for those kids while they're waiting for perhaps more intervention, diagnoses, that kind of thing. But speech therapy and parents and providers and daycare providers. All of these strategies can be used by anyone.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the interaction. We are watching the chat, and when you have suggestions for future, we will note for future topics so we can talk about as a COP. You'll also have that opportunity during the evaluation to also give us future topics. The steering team is always looking at the evaluations and determining what are we going to do next year? What is it that people need to talk about? So let's go ahead, take a 5-minute break, do what you need to do. We'll come back at 10:30 with Erin Thomson and Care Navigation. Thank you so much.